The first agenda item is a call to order. The time is 10:30 on Tuesday, November 17th, and we do have a quorum. Welcome, commissioners. Commissioner Boatwright, Commissioner Marino, Commissioner Atkins. We literally have all four corners of the state of Texas represented, and we are without Commissioner Mack, but all is well. He has a scheduling conflict, no health issues, so that's good news. Good morning on behalf of my fellow commissioners and our hundreds of TABC employees across the state. Thank you for joining us in today's virtual meeting. I'm Kevin Lilly, chairman of the TABC. And I'd like to point out a couple of things before we start. As all of you know, the coronavirus pandemic is unfortunately still very real. We just heard from, obviously, the difficulty that we're facing with our citizens out in West Texas and El Paso. And while there's been some good news on the vaccine front, any potential mass distribution of a vaccine is still months away. So it's incumbent on all of us to continue to follow the state's protocol and national guidelines for the prevention of COVID-19. For business owners operating a TABC licensed bar or restaurant, that means following capacity and social distancing rules. And for all of us, wearing facial coverings is important and as required. I've said it before, but all of us need to remain vigilant and put safety for others as well as ourselves first and foremost for the foreseeable future. For those businesses who have been affected by this crisis, please rest assured that the TABC will continue to do everything we can to assist you. On a happier note, I'd like to also take a moment to recognize a very important holiday. The 11th hour of the 11th month of the 11th day ended the probably most brutal war in the history of our world. Veterans Day was initially established to celebrate the ending of World War I. It's known as Armistice Day abroad, but it later expanded to honor all of our nation's veterans and those that have served in times of war and peace. Here at TABC, we're honored to employ dozens of military veterans at all levels within the agency. These military veterans are the epitome of public service, and having chosen to continue to work for the people of Texas as public servants even after their federal service has been completed is laudable. As a veteran myself, it's always wonderful, as I tell young soldiers, that at least in this country, that men and women who wear camouflage are treated with great respect. We are never an enemy of the people. We are the army of the people, and or the Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Navy, and Space Force. So an extremely heartfelt thank you to all of our veterans and also to those in the community. We know that veterans are a major part of our industry. They're a major part of restaurants and bars, craft brewers, etc. And so for all people on this call and all people in the state of Texas that have served, we thank you. So at that moment, at this time, I think it's appropriate for us to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next agenda item is approval of commission meeting minutes as of September 22nd, 2020. I so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Marino, thank you, ma'am. Minutes are approved as we will now vote. The ayes have it. Minutes are approved as written. Our votes have been recorded.
Commissioner Marino, do you vote aye?
Yeah, I sent.
It just hasn't gotten here. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, we're good to go. Next is I want to honor the current and former employees of the TABC, which many of you don't know that yesterday, today, we are actually celebrating the 85th birthday of this agency. It was established in November 16th, 1935 by an act of the Texas legislature, originally called the Texas Liquor Control Board. The agency was established to ensure the safe and lawful manufacture, distribution of alcoholic beverages. As you know, that was the end of Prohibition, and so we went from a virtually unregulated to an illegal and then to a regulated commodity. And so since 1935, thousands of Texans have proudly served the Lone Star State, helping businesses establish themselves within a competitive and equitable alcoholic beverage industry. At the same time, our TABC agents have worked to ensure alcoholic beverages are sold safely and according to state law. 85 years is a long time. I don't think anyone on this call remembered the days of Prohibition. My mother, who's still alive, was born around that time. But over the last 8.5 decades, the industry in our state have changed tremendously. In fact, they've even changed tremendously just in the short time that I've served on the commission. We've been there every step of the way, adopting new practices and new technologies as we grow to the 21st century and the challenges that face not only our agency, but the industry as a whole. And if you think about it, in 1935, there were very few alcohol manufacturers, and things like liquor by the drink were not allowed and had yet to be adopted. Now in 2020, we have Texas wineries, breweries, distilleries, and they become a major tourist draw. Many communities in Texas, Fredericksburg comes to mind, have seen such a renaissance of commerce because of the maturing distilling, winery, and beer industry and the tourism that it brings to these communities. All in all, the Texas alcoholic beverage industry brings in more than $40 billion to the state economy and employs tens of thousands of Texans, that is the liquor and alcohol industry. But even with this growth, the pandemic has been a significant challenge for our industry. It's been a significant challenge for our employees, a significant challenge to our constituents, and that is the industry. And so as we move together for the future, I can assure you that TABC will be there every step of the way. And in closing, the success of the last 85 years would not have been possible without the men and women who come to work at TABC every day and dedicate themselves to serving the people of Texas. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff. Thank you, employees of this great agency. And now at this time, I would like to turn the table over to my fellow commissioners if they have any comments.
Well, thank you, Chairman. 8.5 decades is a tremendous accomplishment, but I dare say the last 8.5 months have been the most challenging for our industry. I'm incredibly proud of how TABC has stepped up to assist and support the industry as best possible, while also making an effort to protect the safety of all Texans while we battle this pandemic. I would like to reiterate our thanks to all our dedicated TABC employees, and I look forward to a near future where we can work together with industry to return to business as usual. So thank you.
Well said, sir. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think he took the words out of all of our mouths. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Boatwright, any comments?
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to keep the focus on the industries that we regulate and the people whose jobs and livelihoods are at stake. And I want to remember them and all that we do. It is an accomplishment to be around for a long time, but we need to be making sure that the industries we regulate are around for a long time too. And I want to keep our eyes on that ball. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Well, we're looking forward to the next 85 years. And as Commissioner Atkins said, the last 8.5 months have felt kind of like 85 years, I'm sure, to a lot of us. So thank you all. We're now going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the AIMS, AIMS, and POE modular demonstration. Directors Mosley and Rainey,
Sir, we're on point.
you
We're
guys
on,
are remote, and welcome.
sir, we're on Commissioner Training Manual 3.1.
Oh, did I jump ahead of that? Okay. Sorry, John. You're going to have to go back in the queue. Excuse me. I'm still adjusting to virtual. So the next agenda item, I stand corrected. My apologies, is the Commissioner Training Manual. Colonel Dement.
Hey, good morning, sir. Thank you. I thought for a moment I had to stay, but
You're ready to go home?
yeah, I'm out. Hey, good morning, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners. I am Daryl DeMint, your Inspector General, and thank you. As each of you have discovered, we have modernized and streamlined your training manual and the process by which you will receive your training credit on an annual basis. Slide, please. We have appreciated your cooperation and understanding for the completion of your first ever virtual commissioner training program. And to my understanding, each of the 5 of you have already completed that. These improvements were based on sunset recommendations the 86 legislature provided and updates to section 5.022 training of the Alcohol Beverage Code. Slide, please. Shown here is an example of what you saw once logged into the My Policies application. My Policies is held and maintained by one of the greater minds of TABC, Ms. Amy Cardona. She is a key leader in your Strategic Initiatives and Performance Improvement Division. Going forward, Auditor and Investigator Kathleen Albright will provide you concierge services by assisting each of you on an individual basis and at a time of your convenience. This will ensure any challenges, technical or otherwise, can be easily resolved. I will introduce Kathleen. Kathleen Albright is currently assigned to the Office of Inspector General as an auditor and investigator in the Houston area. She has been with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission now for 9 years. During her tenure with the agency, she has been assigned to the Audit and Investigations Division as an auditor, the Financial Crimes Unit as a commissioned peace officer, and the Office of Inspector General. She has completed and earned both the Fraud Examiner and Anti-Money Laundering Specialist certifications. During her time with the Financial Crimes Unit, Kathleen was deputized as a task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration, where she held both state and federal law enforcement credentials. Ms. Albright, it's all yours.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Albright, and like he said, I'm speaking to you today from the Houston region. This is where I am geographically located, but I will be assisting you virtually as we continue with this improved and contemporary style of learning. We will ask that you renew this training each January, beginning of January 2022, and then each subsequent January. Last slide, please. Finally, no job is complete until the paperwork is done, or in the year 2020, until the green acknowledgement button has been pressed. From this point forward, your acknowledgement of required training inside the My Policies application will serve as our agency audit trail for your required statement of acknowledgement as prescribed by section 5.022 of our code. Commissioners, subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Commissioners, any questions? Outstanding work. Thank you all. All right, now we're going to get to what I tried to push ahead on the agenda earlier. This is the AIMS POE modular demonstration. Directors Mosley and Rainey.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Retta Mosley, and I serve as the Chief Information Officer for TABC. I and Chief Rainey, Director of Ports of Entry, are here today to present to you an update on the agency's Technology Transformation Initiative. Next slide, please. As you can see on this opening slide, this modular demonstration is part of the Alcohol Industry Management System, what we call AIMS, that's currently in development. Next slide, please. Chief Rainey.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is John Rainey, and I serve as your Chief of Port of Entry. I'll be discussing today the information on the new point of sale system. This new system is a state-of-the-art transformation initiative, which will operate as a mobile cash register and allow RCOs to expedite customer transactions more efficiently and effectively, reduce employee cash handling errors, and provide the customer with a more simplified receipt that shows the total sales to include any disallowed product.
Next slide, please, Joe. Today's demonstration that you're seeing online features one of the functionalities within this point of sale. It's a cash transaction from start to finish. This module provides a two-pronged benefit for us. The regulatory compliance officers, or RCOs, will experience a modernized, more efficient workflow that can then be parlayed into a second benefit for quicker service to each person entering the Lone Star State who is wanting to import some type of alcoholic beverage. The RCOs can process transactions for all types of allowable products. The system also contains functionality for processing disallowable products in accordance with our code as well. The new POE module is fully integrated with Texas.gov. Texas.gov contains the state's payment processing system for all state agencies who collect fees and taxes online or through a point of sale like ours that we are showing to you today. Once all components of the RCO's new hardware kits are received, set up, and tested, the rollout of the pilot program will be paused until mid to late February 2021, when the holiday season, including Pasano, is over. What you're seeing here at the very end is just an example of the receipt that they will be receiving, and it can be emailed to them as printed. That is all we have on the demonstration at this point. Next slide, please. And Chief Rainey, I'll give it back to you.
So I have a quick question Chief, before you continue. So just for, not to belabor the point, but for the sake of the commissioners that are relatively new, tell us what it used to be like. So before this technology came, how'd you guys done it for the last, 40 years?
Chairman and commissioners, prior to rolling out Poetics, which is the POE tax collection system that we currently use right now, we started using that system in 2008. So prior to 2008, it was basically a manual system. The tax compliance officer or regulatory compliance officer, basically in the old days or prior to 2008, had sheets of stamps on one side of them, and when they made the transaction, it was all done manually. Almost, you can almost say it was done kind of like using a big chief tablet. So they collected the money and then they gave the customer the stamps. Then at the end of the day, they had to count how many stamps. At the beginning of the day, they counted how many stamps they had, and they knew how much they were supposed to collect. And at the end of the day, they subtracted all the stamps they sold, and they came up with their deposit. So it was pretty basic fundamental system. But then in 2008, we started with the new electronic collection system, which we currently use right now. This new system that we're rolling out, it's going to work very similar to what we're currently using, other than it's going to be an upgrade software platform compared to what we use right now. The current hardware that we're using, we've been using since 2008, and as you all well know, electronic hardware wears out, so we're pretty well at the end of life of the current electronic hardware we're using. So the new software and the new hardware that we're getting is really a transformation upgrade to what we have right now. And this last part that I'm going to add on, which is what we're integrating into the new mobile platform, is the PortPass self-reporting app. So this new self-reporting app will be a significant upgrade for the customer to perform self-pay activities before coming to the RCO's workstation. So the customer will be able to conduct their transaction online, then come to the RCO so the RCO can verify that the sale is done correctly. And we'll use a QR code that will be scanned by the RCO. This should significantly speed up the customer transaction process considerably and make it easier for our customers to not have to wait in line a long time to buy their product and move on.
Mhm. Outstanding. Thank you.
Next slide, please, Joe. What you're going to see now, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, are just some screenshots from PortPass, the web app that Chief Rainey just reviewed with you as it applies to our purpose and related processes. The main thing I want to stress at this point is not only are we working to modernize TABC's technology and technological infrastructure, we're also developing processes within AIMS, including PortPass for POE, to be accessible by and more convenient for the public, to minimize their time in line at the border, or just whenever they're interacting with TABC online in various ways. That concludes our presentation for you. If you have any questions for us, otherwise we are done.
Commissioners, any questions or comments?
The system looks great.
Thank you. We're very excited about it.
Another great example of the agency adapting and using technology to improve the customer experience and the citizen experience. So kudos to all the staff for making this happen. All right, the next agenda item is a sunset compliance update. Associate Director Collins, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I am Amanda Collins, and I serve as Associate Director of SIPI, which is Strategic Initiatives and Performance Improvement. In September 2019, SIPI was formed to oversee implementation of legislation, including the Sunset Bill, which involves many activities you'll hear about in the next few slides. SIPI is also charged with the evaluation of structures, processes, and programs for efficiency and effectiveness. But the focus for the first 2 years is sunset. I'll turn it over to co-directors Marianne Warlock and Amy Cardona to highlight the accomplishments we've achieved and major initiatives currently underway. Marianne.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chairman. So complying with sunset involves implementing statutory provisions outlined in the Sunset Bill, HB 1545, as well as the management actions of the Sunset Advisory Commission. We did both. And to do so requires coordination of multiple activities: project management, rulemaking, planning, policy and procedure development and review, not to mention communication and education of TABC staff, as well as the industry, local governments, and the public. It takes all divisions putting in tremendous effort to implement these changes. Next slide, please, as I turn it over to Amy Cardona.
Actually, next slide. There we go. Thank you, Marianne. Good morning, Commissioners. Implementing the Sunset Bill and all of the management actions is definitely an ongoing process, but much has been accomplished already. There's a lot we could talk about and a lot of individual initiatives that we've completed and some that are ongoing, but there are 3 that I'll quickly highlight from this slide. The first one is last year in September of 2019, we eliminated 14 licenses and permits. The number started at 75. The legislature added the consumer delivery permit. So that took us up to 76, and then we subtracted these 14. So right now we're sitting at 62. The biggest impact was elimination of about 30,000 agents permits in 4 different permit categories. The next thing I'll highlight is product registration, and formerly known as label approval. That's what we've called it. But the new process will be known as product registration. The bill streamlined our process for producers to register their products in Texas in a variety of ways. And you've already adopted those new rules at the September meeting, and they will be effective on December 31st. And then the last thing I'll highlight here is the Sunset Bill made significant changes to how we evaluate and make decisions on applications, including the protest process that the public and government officials use to raise concerns about an application. We started this process in January of this year, and we're just about there. You already adopted the rules to implement these changes in September, and they will be effective on December 31st. And internally, we've trained about 350 TABC staff, and we finalized new procedures to implement the changes and fill in a lot of the details from the statutory changes to get that implemented by the end of 2020. Next slide, please, and I'll hand it back over to Mary Ann.
Great. So some statutory provisions and management actions won't take effect for another 10 months, but the planning is well underway. So in September 2021, lots of changes. So we'll go from 62 to 37 licenses and permits as a result of changes to the license permit structure from the Sunset Bill. For example, some permits will be eliminated and their authorities will be rolled into other permits. Other changes will be due to the elimination of the distinction between beer and ale. What we currently refer to as beer, ale, or malt liquor will be referred to as a malt beverage. For example, instead of a brewery who holds a manufacturer's license to make beer and a brewer's permit to make ale, in September, the brewery will need one license. That's a brewer's license to conduct business. And to make it even more exciting, AIMS will be rolled out at the same time as all of these changes and many others. This requires a lot of coordination and planning to ensure all the division's perspectives are taken into account, statutory deadlines are met, and regulatory functions are addressed. We established a work group in August, and many subgroups meet on a regular basis to address challenges, develop communication strategies, and many more activities. So for our final slide, I'll turn it back to Amy. Next slide.
Okay, so we have 3 outside entities that are reviewing our compliance and implementation of both the Sunset Bill itself, as well as the management actions from the Sunset Commission. The State Auditor's Office has already has reviewed our implementation of the Sunset Commission management actions. We submitted a response to them in September, and they should be publishing a report sometime this fall. I'm not sure exactly what date that will be. The Licensing and Administrative Procedures Committee in the House, they have requested information related to our implementation of the bill, and we in SIPI have provided our Director of Government Relations, Nick Raymond, with the information that he'll need to do that and respond to that request. And last but not least, the Sunset Commission staff requested in-depth information about our implementation of every provision of the bill. And we submitted a response with a substantial amount of supporting documentation at the end of October. So we're wrapping up those efforts at External Compliance Review. And that's all we have for our presentation, and we'd be happy to address any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions regarding the sunset issues or any sunset issues? Well, it was a long process, and not enough thanks can be given to the team that spent the better part of a year going through the sunset evaluation and what I think was a successful and outstanding outcome, starting with General Nettles and working throughout the system. It was an enormous undertaking, and it's good that hopefully you only have to do it every 10 years. So with that, we're going to go to a very exciting item called the Best of the Best competition. Director Colonel Dement, please.
Chairman Lilly, Commissioners, thank you again. I am Darrell Dement, your Inspector General, and it is my pleasure to report to you today the result of our annual Best of the Best competition. This was our 3rd year to conduct the Best of the Best and recognize our employees for their technical and customer service excellence. However, as with many things, 2020 provided unique challenges in accomplishing this goal. And I'm proud of the fact that our agency was able to convert the regional and overall competition finals to a predominantly virtual environment. A special thanks goes to Captain Albert Rodriguez of our training division. He was able to fully adapt all events to function in a pandemic environment. Although certain things like firearms qualifications and physical fitness testing could not be done virtually, they were accomplished remotely. And this reduced exposure concerns while still allowing for a competitive climate, albeit virtual. Slide, please. The field started with 191 competitors, was reduced to 23 regional champions, and eventually on November the 4th, only 4 remained to hold the esteemed title of overall champion. The overall winner for audit and investigations is from Region 4 and is Sean Naibi Oskoe. From licensing in Region 2, Brittany King. Enforcement Region 3, Eric De Leon. And Ports of Region, which happens to be in Region 5, Carlos Poe. Please join me in congratulating the best of the best winners for their commitment and dedication to continued excellence in themselves and in the Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, you know, I know you remember the days when we had the best warrior competition, right? And it was kind of the same thing where you would go out and allow the common soldier to compete for something extraordinary. And while we recognize everyone's great job every day, it's nice to be able to recognize individuals and that we feel do it at such a level that they should be recognized. And so I think this is a great competition, and I applaud you for it. Commissioners, any comments?
Congratulations to all the winners.
Yes, I'm really moved by us being able to have best of the best today, as well as the compliance update on Sunset. When you really just look at everything that we're looking at today, and then also celebrating 85 years of moving forward with this agency, the timing couldn't be perfect. So I really appreciate all of the agents and the hard work that has gone into bringing us up 85 years up in technology, as well as recognizing those that are going above and beyond. So thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you all. All right. The behind the scenes guy, Director Black, and if you think that my comments are remotely decent, I can assure you they are not necessarily ad lib. As Brian scrubs everything down and gives me great scripts such as these to read and not fall on my face in a public meeting. So thank you for being the wind beneath my wings, Director Black. And with that, another extraordinary item is the human trafficking victims video. So Director Black, please walk us through it, sir.
Well, thank you, sir, for those kind words, and we just appreciate being able to support you and all the commissioners. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to show you this wonderful video today. But before I get to the video, next slide, please. Just a quick review on TABC's connection to combating human trafficking. Last session, you may remember the Texas legislature made the disruption and dismantling of human trafficking a top priority for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Of course, this makes great sense. As we celebrate our 85th anniversary, we are reminded that for more than 8 decades, we have battled against organized crime, and it is our agency's duty to rescue victims who are trapped in a horrible situation. TABC is on the front lines of battling human trafficking because we license 3 out of the 4 top businesses that have close ties to trafficking: bars, restaurants, and hotels. Next slide, please. We have a process to take down these criminals who are using legitimate businesses to hide their illegal activities. And you can see the process in this slide. But what this slide doesn't show you is the human cost, what this horrific crime does to the victims. Next slide, please. To understand that, you have to hear directly from a victim. Our TABC videographer, Juan Rodriguez, gives us the inside into Allison's story. Roll video, please.
I really lost my innocence in my childhood. When I see these It just makes me so angry to know that one person can just destroy your life. So my name is Allison Franklin, and I am a human trafficking survivor. I was 3 years old, and my father was shot and killed. Following his death, my mother, who was 19, moved in with my great-grandparents. Little did she know that my grandfather was a predator, and shortly after my father's funeral, my grandfather began raping me. With that abuse, it just launched me on a journey of self-destruction that probably spanned over 34 years. Around 11 or 12, I started to run away from home. I found myself homeless in the streets of Houston with no food, no clothes, no place to sleep. Majority of traffickers, they target the most vulnerable, right, when they're at their lowest point. I was picked up by my first predator probably within an hour. He shared with me that I was really, really pretty and that it was dangerous out there. If I went home with him, I could stay with him until I figured things out. Over a very short period of time, he convinced me that we were in a relationship. I believed he was my boyfriend, but in fact that he had preyed upon me for his own sexual benefits and pleasures. I did escape and once again found myself homeless in the streets of Houston. This was a lot of gang activity. At that point, I was targeted by gangs. They introduced me to drugs and became a full-fledged addict. And in that time period, I would engage in commercial sex work as well as distribution of drugs. Gang members would be ordered to kidnap me, rape me, beat me, force me to prostitute. I was groomed to purchase all those drugs, sell all those drugs. We moved money, we moved guns, we moved cars, we moved people, including grooming me to recruit other women to be trafficked as well. I cycled in and out of our criminal justice system. I spent over 10 years collectively behind bars with 8 felonies, nearly all incurred while under the oppression of my trafficker. So often when you're stripped of your choices from a very young kid, and then you're trafficked and your choices are stripped again, and then you come here and even more choices are stripped from you. And it wasn't until my 9th felony that I actually got access to meaningful services that would help me exit that life.
Human trafficking is a top investigative priority, so we take it very seriously. My name is John Wall. I am a major with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission Special Investigations Unit. TABC has developed and organized a unit called the Special Investigations Unit that its specialty is in focusing on human trafficking and organized crime cases that are occurring in the licensed premise and alcohol beverage industry. Because we issue the permits to the licensed premise, we can go in and conduct inspections on a regular basis, and this gives us the opportunity to uncover signs of criminal activities, especially when it comes to human trafficking. If it's not for the work of our agents and our investigators, we're not going to uncover these victims to eradicate human trafficking by dismantling criminal organizations and networks. With helping victims like Allison, we can understand the mindset of what a victim has been through. If we can dive into that and understand their plight, then we can better engage the victims as we conduct these investigations and provide a better response.
Get her locked up. Being able to access services that are meaningful was the turnaround for me. The real turnaround, though, however, was being identified as a victim of trafficking. Making that connection that I was a victim of trafficking makes me angry, but it also gives me hope that we have an opportunity to stand up and be active bystanders or just recognize our role that that we all have room in this fight. I wish I didn't have the story to tell. I wish I had a different story to tell. But I hope that my story, inspires others to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else.
I'm Kevin Lilly, chairman of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. It's an unfortunate fact that many victims of human trafficking are being held against their will in some of the bars, clubs, and restaurants that are licensed by the TABC. If you notice suspicious activity in a TABC licensed bar, restaurant, or other alcohol retailer, please report it immediately. You're not only helping to save the lives of the victims, you're helping to keep an important economic engine safe for business owners and customers.
So commissioners and chairman, hopefully you agree with me that that is a very powerful story of incredible hardships and overcoming such difficulty. We're sharing this video with our social media sites. We're also providing it to the Texas Human Trafficking Task Force to distribute, and asking Human Trafficking Coordinating Council to share where appropriate. We want to get this message out as much as possible, and we just appreciate you commissioners helping us with that fight, because I know you all are focused on it as well. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions or if you have any comments.
I think we're all a little quiet. I know I am completely moved by Allison's story. I don't know how you found her, Brian, or how that all transpired, but if at all, to get a message to her and maybe even meet her one day and thank her for her testimony, because that will change a lot of lives. Anything that we can do to help get the word out and continue this fight, I think we all want to stand up and be the voice for so many others that are in the shadows right now. So cannot thank you enough for putting this together, and could not be prouder of our agency in taking the lead in doing this to stamp out this evil, because that's exactly what it is evil. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The sad truth is that Allison is not an isolated incident. In the streets of Houston, there are probably thousands of Allisons whose story may never be told. And so when people ask, why is the TABC so focused and have been so dedicated in the fight against human trafficking, you need to do nothing more than listen to her testimony. And I'd also like to recognize Major Wall, who you saw in that video. He is one of the foremost experts on human trafficking in the United States. He ran HATRA, which was the Houston Human Trafficking Rescue Alliance, a long veteran of the Houston Police Department. And we are so fortunate to have Major Wall leading our Special Investigations Unit. He's an extraordinary resource. And, I'm proud of the fact that we more than likely have the largest undercover operation dedicated to human trafficking of any law enforcement agency in the state of Texas. It's a serious problem, and we will remain vigilant in our mission to ultimately eradicate this horrible crime from licensed establishments. So, Brian, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Director Salinas, General Salinas, the next undercover school, which I understood was extraordinary. In the aforementioned effort, undercover work is one of the backbones of this agency, and we are quickly and rapidly establishing a reputation as second to none in undercover work. And so, General Salinas, if you could please walk us through the human trafficking portal.
Absolutely. Good morning, Chairman Lilly. Good morning, fellow commissioners. I am Orlando Salinas, retired Brigadier General and Director of the Training Division. On a personal note, Chairman, I would like to thank you for your service. I would ask also on a personal note that we remember that today, as you and I are here, we have brothers and sisters, both in the military and law enforcement, who are in harm's way, and our prayers go out to them. Sir, the training division is very busy, and simultaneously as we're doing this commission meeting virtually, we are hosting 2 classes of first line supervisors course that's currently going on. And we also have intermediate courses for our police officers. To start this, the first slide of note and significance, and I know you've read through the slide. I want to just bring out that this did yield some course credit to our commission people. Of the TCO course number is 6050, and 146 hours credit was received because of the participation in this undercover investigative course. Next slide, please. Sir, I know that we say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a video is probably worth an encyclopedia, so I'll go really quickly through these because I've got a couple of videos to share with you. Overall here, this was a command structure. As you know, and you just saw in the video, Allison Franklin was one of the SMEs that we contacted because of her experience as human trafficking survivor. What is not known is Allison Franklin has also helped us put together a glossary of terms that is currently being used by the traffickers. There's 86 terms. We're also getting those translated into Spanish so that we can better prepare our officers and other law enforcement officers to combat this terrible crime. You'll see the overall command structure for the school because it was a week-long progress, and we'll go through this. This was done with the guidance of General Nettles. So General Nettles, thank you for your help and guidance as we were putting this together. Other SMEs, including Nicolas Gutierrez, who was a former TABC agent. He now works in San Antonio. He had gone through the FBI undercover school and was very informative and very helpful as we put it together. Antonio Gracia is with HPD. He also works with their crime unit and was helpful as we continued along the path. We had a total of 20 participants, 14 from SIU and 6 from enforcement. Next slide, please. Sir, the key issues here, and I think that you've seen, is Allison Franklin. What we wanted to do, what makes this course completely different, the first is all online, but what makes this course completely different from any other undercover course is that we really tried to focus on the victim's perspective, whether it was victimization or recruitment or vulnerabilities and how they're actually get targeted. As you heard what Allison said within the hour, she was picked up and she was victimized. So this is the first week of course with a very strong focus, not only on how we handle informants, but how we handle our victims and connect them to NGOs. Next slide, please. So during week 2, as you can see, during week 2, we also had another SME, Tamia Nagy. She actually VTC'd in from Canada. She was a human trafficking survivor, gave us a lot of great TTPs on how we work with victims and survivors. We found out from her that there's a couple of questions we need to ask very quickly to try to gain their trust and confidence. Of course, we work very closely with district attorneys, both at the state and federal level, so we can make sure that we make very solid prosecutory cases against these people to try to get them out of business. You can also see we work with NGOs to try to make sure that we knew there was a continuum of connection and health. We don't just rescue them, we continue them through the NGOs. Next slide, please. So this was our operation third week. They were fully enrolled. They were doing surveillance, counter surveillance throughout the area from everywhere from not only in Bryan College stations, but Hearns and all across. So I'd like to get to the videos now. I also have with me here Deputy Director Javier Cáceres to make sure I keep all the key points. If we can go to the next slide, please, and show the video. So as this is playing, I will just narrate it a little bit. At Bryan College Station at the TEACS campus, we were able to in this So this is an indicator. We had 3 locations where usually our agents have to operate. There was a brothel, a bar, and a residence. And during this bar scene, you could see that they were having to identify what was the illicit activities and the human trafficking activities. And it came complete with music, disco, and everything else, and made it as confusing as we could and as close to real world scenario. A lot of other police agencies joined us there just to view what we were doing, not only from TEACS, but from the Houston Police Department. And they were nothing but a lot of praise and confidence to the reality of what we were accomplishing during this. Next slide, please. Sir, working closely, as you saw in the command structure, with our CIU unit, Director County Sergeant Major Riley, we were also, because CIU is such a new unit and our experts in intel analysts, they were able to provide us with some of these products that we were using as we were trying to track the traffickers down through the cartels. Of course, this information was used to help make the cases. Let's go to the next slide, please. Sir, this is the actual thing prepared, and this, let me let you hear the video and then I'll talk through this. Please roll the slide.
Shell, thank you. Undercover TABC agents are getting prepared to spot and end human trafficking, and they're being trained right here at home at the Rellis campus.
News 3's Andy Krause is live there tonight. And Andy, you were inside the training simulation room. What was that like?
Well, behind me is the room where it all went down. The TABC built a model bar or cantina and simulated a situation where human trafficking is occurring. Now, it was complete with a DJ and strobe lights until police came in and shut it all down and started making arrests. The whole thing was designed to teach undercover techniques and help save human trafficking victims across Texas.
So you can see, sir, it was a very eye-opening production, and yielded very good results for our agents, a lot of positive feedback. Let's go to the next slide. So along with this, with General Nettles' guidance, we have worked very closely with TEECS and TCOL, and we've also created a TCOL course number 3271, which yields 8 credit hours, which is Advanced Human Trafficking. As of today, sir, I'm happy to report that this is free to all our law enforcement brothers and sisters across the state of Texas. Today, we have 789 enrollees who have actually started either taking the course or have completed the course. So it's become a very good course and yield credit for our law enforcement brothers and sisters. Next slide, please. Sir, subject to your questions, I know it's been a very fast and furious review of what we're doing and what we continue to do, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, on behalf of the commission, will there ever be an opportunity for us to observe any of this training in college?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I would be happy to work with General Nettles and we can coordinate that. Of course, this was our first ever run at this, so it kind of served as a beta test for us, but it seems the results have been really good, and we would be happy and honored to have you all with us at any time, sir.
So also, where were you able to get the players, the role players? Are they local students at the campus or are they TABC employees?
Chairman, that's a great question. For this run, because of COVID and with all the mitigation strategies that we were implementing, they were mainly our people, our TABC employees. Most of them were our law enforcement people. We had done some coordination with the local law enforcement community policing with the Rellis BPOC course. So we had other people on standby and ready to go. But because of COVID mitigation, we decided to keep safe, and we only used our internal people. We truly believe that in the future, we will be able to bring in not only other law enforcement agencies, but for role players. Some of the...
Great. Questions from the commission?
No questions. Excellent work.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, excellent job. And just as a point of reference to some of our newer commissioners, TCOL, as is referred, is the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. So as we regulate the alcohol industry, TCOL regulates the law enforcement industry. So to the extent there is licensing required, you must go through TCOL and receive TCOL certification. So the sort of buck stops with them to certify law enforcement officers. So General, thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort. Outstanding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And the next agenda item is Operation Safe Open. Chief Kirkendall.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman Lilly. My name, for the record, is Victor Kirkendall, and I serve as your Chief of Law Enforcement here at TABC, and I'm providing an update to Operation Safe Open. And before I begin, I want to kind of expand upon something Commissioner Atkins touched upon in his opening statement, that the agency's motto is Texans helping businesses and protecting communities. And since the beginning of this pandemic, that's exactly what the great men and women here at TABC have been trying to do. Whether it's the regulatory compliance officers working on the front line along the border, ensuring the safe and legal importation of alcohol beverages, to the licensing staff that are pouring through hundreds of applications and affidavits from struggling businesses just trying to redefine their business operations so they can open or remain open during this pandemic, to the hundreds of auditors and agents working across the state of Texas, conducting inspections and operations to ensure that retail locations are following the governor's orders and ensuring safe, proper social distancing at their places of businesses. And to the great work our communications division has done, pushing out media information and also updating our website under the COVID page of the latest information relating impacting the industry during this pandemic. These are just some of the examples that agency staff is trying to do to help out industry and the local communities. So next slide. So since the beginning of this pandemic, as everyone is painfully aware, Texas has been under a disaster declaration since March. And this has allowed Governor Abbott to take several actions to help combat the spread of this COVID. And what I'd like to draw your attention to, this timeline here illustrates some of those actions as it impacted the industry. And I'd like to bring your attention to the time frame just behind GA26, which GA26 allowed bars to allow transition from 25 to 50% occupancy rates inside their places of business, and restaurants to go from 50 to 75%. Immediately after GA26 came out, Texas experienced a huge spike of COVID-related illnesses and hospitalizations. And at the same time, the agency also experienced a record number of complaints against retail establishments alleging violations of the governor's orders. So on June 18th, the agency implemented Operation Safe Open in response to these issues. Next slide. So since the beginning of Operation Safe Open, the agency has received over 3,000 complaints against over almost 2,000 licensed locations across the state of Texas. This caused us to perform nearly 24,000 inspections and operations, discovering over 650 locations and violations, which required over 200 emergency orders issued for those that are refusing to comply. Now, this number seems extreme, but if you put things in perspective as relating to the number of inspections and operations conducted, since the beginning, that is only the number of locations actually required to issue an emergency order against was less than 3%. And since our last briefing at the last commission meeting, that number has actually drawn closer to 2%. So overall, this demonstrates that the alcohol beverage industry is vastly compliant, and this is a good news for the industry. Next slide. Some of the things that we're trying to do is always helping the industry, the businesses, and the local communities adapting to the ever-changing climate of this pandemic. I'd like to draw your attention to the map that you see on this slide here. This map is a representation of counties that are allowed to operate in compliance with GA32, which means that for those counties where hospitalization rates are low and the county judges have elected to opt in, they would be highlighted in green. And for those counties, bars or similar establishments can operate up to 50%, and restaurants can operate up to 75%. For those counties that are not highlighted, that means either the hospitalization rates are very high or the county judges have not opted in. Now this map, I need to acknowledge that this map is a product of our communications division with the assistance of the Texas General Land Office and with collaboration through our audit division and the Texas Department of Health Services. And it's updated daily for the use of industry and interested stakeholders alike. Another thing I'd like to highlight as far as our efforts is here recently in El Paso, there was a huge spike of COVID-related illnesses and hospitalizations where local elected officials and state representatives petitioned the governor for assistance. And as a result, General Nettles has directed us to deploy our special response team to the El Paso area. Now, before we sent them out there to El Paso, we made sure that the media and the community knew that we were coming and what our intent was. And we conveyed that intent also to local officials. And upon our arrival, we did find a handful of locations that were found to be violating, and some which did require emergency orders to be issued. But I can proudly report that this operation, the surge, continues to this date in the El Paso area, and that since the first week or so, we're noticing a drastic decline in the number of locations we're finding in violations, and even less in those locations requiring emergency orders to be issued. And so these are some of the examples that we're helping local businesses, the businesses across the state and local communities to navigate through this pandemic. Barring any questions you have, that concludes my briefing, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief. I am kind of curious about the Panhandle. It seems that many of those counties in the more remote sections of the Panhandle probably have very few cases, if any. So is that just, you're saying that those counties have chosen not to open, or we just haven't caught up with them yet?
Well, I don't want to steal some of the thunder, because you're going to hear from our auditing division about the opt-in process, and they can expand upon that a little bit more.
Okay,
but it's based on, I'm sorry?
Fair enough, that's fine.
Okay.
I did want to just say thank you. The help of the additional 14 agents out here in El Paso was extremely appreciated. And while we did not find a bunch of violators, right, there was a handful, and your ability to get in and deal with that handful that were a safety concern was extremely helpful. So I just think the entire El Paso community is extremely thankful for your support.
And I'd also like to recognize General Nettles and Chief Kirkendall. When the situation became more dire in El Paso, the request was made for assistance, I believe, on Friday evening. And by Saturday morning at 0800, we had 14 individuals rolling to El Paso. So in less than 24 hours from the request for help, we were able to find 16 agents, as well as sort of reformulating the West Texas operations to put a maximum number of individuals on the ground in El Paso. And, I can't think of any other agency that could respond as quickly as we did. So Chief, General, great job.
Thank you, sir.
I know the governor was very happy with that responsiveness. So no other comments from the commission? Okay,
Chief Kirkendall, Chief Kirkendall, thanks a lot for that information. It's extremely important. These days, it's probably the most important thing that we do, even though we do lots of other extremely important things, including all the colossally important things that we do to combat sexual trafficking. But I wanted to thank you for that information. And I want to suggest, this is a bit of a housekeeping matter, but I want to suggest that in future meetings, we talk about these things first. I know that there are a lot of people who are watching these meetings who are waiting for information regarding opening their businesses, and although a lot of the things that we hear about are useful to us as commissioners, I think that we need to be more mindful as we plan these meetings about what the affected businesses need to hear from us. So, for example, I would love to have heard Chief Kirkendall's presentation earlier in the meeting, before or perhaps instead of, say, the 85th anniversary recognition. Yeah, when my grandparents turned 85, we were super glad that they did. It's a lot better than staying at 84, but it's not a real milestone. I want the people who depend on us, who are looking to us for guidance, even comfort, sometimes to be able to get this information right up front without having to wait for an hour about other things. So, Chief Kirkendall, thank you very much for the information that you gave. I want to thank all the other presenters, but I want to be mindful of the things that the public is interested in and needs to hear about. And boy, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next item is, which I think will deal with that specifically, and that is the opt-in status report from Director Bowman.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Gene Bowman, the Deputy Director of Audit Investigations Division. Today's presentation will provide a brief overview of the agency's implementation of the county's opt-in process for opening bars under the Governor's Executive Order 32. Next slide, please. GA 32 was issued on October the 7th and became effective on the 14th of October. It basically enables county judges to open bars at 50% capacity. Some important key terms that I'm going to use in this presentation include trauma service area. It's basically defined as any county that has had 7 consecutive days in which the number of COVID-19 patients admitted to hospitals has exceeded 50% of the total hospitalizations. Attestation is the process by which a county can apply to DSHS, which is the Department of State Health Services, for an exception to being identified as a trauma service area. To qualify, the county must have 30 or fewer new laboratory confirmed COVID-19 cases during the previous 14-day period and meet additional established DSHS COVID health standards. Opt-in is the process by which a county judge that is not located in a trauma service area or has an approved attestation on file with DSHS may file a request with TABC to reopen bars in their county at 50% capacity. Decertify is a process by which a county judge that is previously opted-in to reopen bars must notify TABC that the county is closing bars. As a result of the county's exceeding the 15% COVID hospitalizations in the last 7 days, and the county does not have an approved attestation on file with DHSS. New slide, next slide. To be eligible for reopening, the following protocols must be in place. The county must not be located in a designated trauma service area, or if the county is located in a trauma area, must have attestation approval on file with DSHS. The county judge must submit their opt-in form through a secure DocuSign site to TABC. TABC affirms that the county is cleared for reopening through DSHS and so notifies. Counties that must decertify. If after being previously green-lighted to reopen bars by TABC, the county is identified by DSHS as a trauma service area without attestation in place, and or the county's attestation is revoked by DSHS, the county judge must submit a second opt-in form through DocuSign to TABC and select the option on the form that states ineligible for reopening. TABC affirms that the county is ineligible through DSHS and updates its files accordingly. Next slide. Due to the sensitivity of the county's status and involvement of elected officials, Chief Jones, the Director of Audit Investigation, reviews and affirms each opt-in form received. An electronic affirmation of approval or denial for reopening is sent to each county judge. To ensure internal effectiveness of the process, the status of each submitting county is retained in SharePoint and available for review by appropriate headquarters and field staff. This assists in 2 ways. This assists in managing complaints and identifies which counties have been declared to open, and more importantly, which counties have not opened. Next slide. Currently, there have been 159 counties affirmed for reopening. Of those, 12 became ineligible due to the recent surge in COVID cases within their respective counties and have since been decertified. 95 counties have not submitted a request to opt in. And in line with that, a lot of those counties are out in West Texas. They were Because of the COVID count and hospitalizations, county judges at this point have not elected to attempt to open the county. Along with this, 5 fraudulent submissions were received and flagged as such. These fraudulent forms were referred to OIG for investigation. Next slide. The audit team notifies communications daily by 3 p.m. of all affirmed and or decertified counties for tracking on the agency's GIS mapping system. The map was put together by communications, as pointed out by Chief Kirkendall, with assistance from the General Land Office, and informs the public which counties have opened bars and which counties have not. It also provides our field staff with reliable data as they process COVID-related complaints. At this time, audit would like to recognize ITD, legal, communications, and OIG for working closely with audit to establish a secure and effective opt-in process. In addition, we would like to thank the General Land Office for their assistance in communications development of our website mapping system. This basically concludes my presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So when we talk about the 95 that have not submitted an opt-in application, we have to operate on an assumption, correct? It's not that we know that they have an excessive number of cases. All we know is that that county judge has chosen he or she not to go through the process. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so it could just simply be, I mean, could it be indifference? Could it be they feel like it's not as big of an issue in their county and therefore they're not going to go through the process? Maybe. There's probably no way to know, but it just seems, having spent some time in West Texas, in some of those counties where I can't guarantee because I don't have the empirical evidence, but I would bet that the number of cases are de minimis, if none.
So, Chairman,
yeah.
there's been, it's bad out there. The Panhandle's been hit really, really hard with COVID. Some of the counties around Amarillo and Lubbock have been hit very hard. I wanted you to know that.
Okay, and so I'm just curious if they don't submit, then obviously if we find out that they are operating in excess of the guidance, then they're in violation.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Hey, sir, I just want to make a comment about the work of audit. This was done about 48-hour turnaround. Incredible effort by them and all the team here in order to get this up. Originally, it was proposed that we do follow another state agency's process, which would have been disastrous for us. I think the fact that we've caught 5 people posing as potential county judges is remarkable. And if they hadn't put this process in place, it wouldn't have happened. The other thing we did was to offer online training for the county judges or their assistants and talk to the majority of the county judges across the state about how to opt into this process. So they've done an incredible job here.
Outstanding. Well, again, another example of leading by example and responding to a crisis in a rapid way. So hats off to everyone on your team. Mr. Bowman, thank you, sir, for your time. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
I'd like
Commissioner.
Sorry, yeah, I'd like to, I was not muted. I just want to make an overall comment that that we'll always have in any industry some bad apples, but when you really look at the last 2 presentations, especially when the narrative started getting created in the media that it was the bar's fault for the spread and the spike, but then when you really go into the details, it wasn't. And so I feel our agency has done so much to make sure that when the governor did issue the ability for the industry to open, that we really were on the forefront to make sure that everybody was opening up in a very healthy and safe manner. So to be able to curtail the media narrative that it's the bad bars that are causing this really wasn't the case. And so I really want to applaud the agency for the quick turnaround and being able to kind of squash that narrative, because we have some incredible individuals in our industry, the owners of the restaurants and the bars and the wineries and the distilleries that are working their tails off to make sure that the letter of the law is followed. And so for us to be out there and be a public advocate for them and continue that narrative as our agency is opening up and being safe was really important. And I just applaud the group and their quickness to deploy what they did. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? The next agenda item is public comment. We have received no public comments, and we will proceed to the next agenda item. And that is still document 458-3029. Getting a little feedback here. Okay, I think we're back on. Clark, are we good to go for the SOA docket discussion? All right. Now there we are again. I'll limit my comment to. All right, the next agenda item is proposal for decision SOA docket number 458-20-3029. Mr. Smith, thank you for your time.
Chairman, thank you. The audio may not be able to pick me up, but at least you'll be able to hear me. This is a consent agenda item, a proposal for decision from the State Office of Administrative Hearings. This is the first time we will be presenting one of these to you. This is the result of the Sunset Bill and a new role for you as the commission to make decisions on these contested cases. All that being said, I recommend that the consent agenda be adopted. This item is now before you for your deliberation and decision. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, is the audio sufficient for you to hear Mr. Smith's discussion? Okay,
yes.
Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments of Mr. Smith for this proposal? All right, as we know, this is part of the sunset ruling, and I move that we adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law proposed by the administrative law judge in SOA docket number 458-20.
I just lost audio there. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I will second that, but I'm not being able to hear anyone else at this point.
Yeah, I've lost audio too.
Yeah, I've lost it. I've lost it too. Chairman, we can't hear you, but we can hear each other. I can hear Commissioner Atkins and Commissioner Moreno.
Okay. Clark, can they hear you?
Now we're back.
Back.
We back?
We're back.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try this again. Give me a, if you can't hear me. All right, I move that we adopt the findings and facts and conclusions of law proposed by the administrative law judge in SOA docket number 458-20 2022-3029, and that we order that no action be taken against the respondent's permits in this proceeding. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Atkins, thank you, sir. I have a second. We will now vote.
Everyone's voted?
All right. Motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of repeal Chapter 33, Subchapter Alpha Delta Foxtrot ADF. Ms. Horton.
Good morning. We're still barely morning. Chairman Lilly and Commissioners, you do have, my name is Shana Horton. I am your rules attorney. You have 9 rule packages up for adoption today and 2 proposals. Item 6.1, with these rules and other related rulemaking packages, the Commission is taking the opportunity presented by the extensive changes to Chapter 33 to streamline and reorganize Chapter 33 to be more intuitive and user-friendly. These repeals do not make substantive changes. Rather, the majority of repealed rules will be contemporaneously adopted at a different rule number. The remainder of the repeals are dictated by recent changes to the Alcoholic Beverage Code or a prior repeal of the underlying law. No comments were received, and item 6.1 is now before you for your deliberation and decision on adoption.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this adoption repeal? Having seen none, then I move to approve adoption of repeal Chapter 33, Subchapter A, D, F, Alpha Delta Foxtrot, as recommended by staff. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted?
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter Alpha Delta Foxtrot reorganization. Ms. Horton.
Before you are new rules 33.3, 33.4, 33.6, 33.90 through 33.94, and amended rules 33.2, 33.5, and 3310. These amendments do not make substantive changes. Rather, they are intended to move rule provisions to more appropriate places, update rules to reflect repeals that have already occurred, and make other editorial changes for accuracy and consistency. No comments were received on these proposed rules, and this item is now before you for your deliberation and decision on adoption.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Having heard none, I move to adopt Chapter 33, Subchapter Alpha Delta Foxtrot reorganization as recommended by staff. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Is there a second? Commissioner Marino, thank you. We will now vote.
All have voted?
Votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter C, as in Charlie, bonds. Ms. Horton.
Before you is new subchapter C bonds, rules 33.40 through 33.45, another part of the reorganization of Chapter 33 of the Commission's rules. These rules move bond-related provisions to their own dedicated subchapter, codify certain existing agency policies relating to how regulatory violations impact bond requirements, and make other editorial changes for accuracy and consistency. No comments were received on the proposed rules, and the item is now before you for your deliberation and decision on adoption.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions regarding the surety bond provision? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter C, bonds, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you, sir. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded and the motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration of potential action on adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter E, as in echo, events and temporary location. Ms. Horton, please.
Before you is new Chapter 33, Subchapter E, Sections 33.70 through 33.79, relating to events at temporary locations. In 2019, the Texas Legislature adopted amendments to the Alcoholic Beverage Code, consolidating for the permitting for events at temporary locations into 3 authorizations. These rules implement the legislature's changes and improve current rules for temporary events through reorganization and adoption of certain current agency policies related to the use of alcohol at charity events and qualification for file and use notifications in rule. While the rules would be adopted today, they would not be go into effect until September 1st, 2021, and that is to be contemporaneous with the effective date of the underlying statutory changes. No comments were received on these rules, and the item is now before you for your consideration on adoption.
Questions, comments? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter E, as in echo, events and temporary location, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. We have a second. We'll now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter G, as in golf, emergency orders. Ms. Horton.
Thank you. Before you is new Chapter 33, Subchapter G, which is sections 33.100 through 105 relating to emergency orders. House Bill 1545 added new alcoholic beverage code section 11.614. Under this provision, the commissioner or executive director may issue an emergency order without a hearing, suspending a business's permit or license upon determining that the continued operation of that business constitutes a continuing threat to the public welfare. The statute authorizes adoption by rule of procedures for the determination and appeal of an emergency order. These rules implement the new statute. The agency received formal public comment from one person as reflected in the preamble to the rule adoption, which you received with your meeting materials, but no changes were made to the draft rule as a result of the comments. This item is now before you for your deliberation and decision on adoption.
Thank you. I move to approve, forgive me. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of Chapter 33, Subchapter G, as in golf, emergency orders, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatwright. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Next agenda item is consideration of potential action on adoption and repeal of Chapter 34.3, sanctions for regulatory violations. Ms. Horton, please.
Item 6.6 is the repeal of section 34.3. A replacement to the rule and the related penalty policy are coming up for your consideration today as well. While this repeal would be adopted today, it would not go into effect until March 1st, 2021. No comments were received regarding the proposed repeal, and this item is now before you for your decision on adoption.
Questions or comments, ladies and gentlemen? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption on repeal of Chapter 34.3, sanctions for regulatory violations, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Commissioner Marino, thank you, ma'am. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of Chapter 34.3, sanctions for regulatory violations. Ms. Horton.
New Rule 34.3, along with the associated penalty policy, implements a Sunset Commission recommendation that the TABC complete its schedule of sanctions, as well as new Section 614A of the code, which requires the agency to consider the amount of profits realized by a violator when determining the appropriate penalty for repeat violations. While the base penalties included in the rule are binding on the Commission, the final penalty amount resulting from application of the penalty policy is not, and the Commission and Executive Director are free to impose a different penalty at their discretion. No comments were received on Rule 34.3, and it is now before you for your decision on adoption.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of Chapter 34.3 sanctions for regulatory violations as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you, sir. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of Chapter 34.6, liability for actions of alcohol delivery drives. Ms. Horton.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1450, last legislative session, added Alcoholic Beverage Code Chapter 57, Consumer Delivery Permit. Code Section 57.08 provides an affirmative defense related to the responsibility of the consumer delivery permit holder for the actions of an alcohol delivery driver making deliveries under its permit. New Section 34.6 implements and rule the affirmative defense enacted in statute by the legislature. No formal public comments were received during the comment period. However, upon further review, the executive director's staff revised the draft rule to make it more feasible for a consumer delivery permit holder to qualify for the rule's rebuttable presumption that the permit holder did not directly or indirectly encourage its drivers to violate the law. As revised, the permit holder must show that it adopted and its drivers have read written policies and procedures designed to prevent and that affirm a strong commitment by the permit holder to prohibit violations of Chapter 57 of the code. And either all of its drivers for the past 24 months have maintained a TABC delivery driver certification during their engagement by the permit holder, or the transaction in question was completed using a software application meeting Commission standards. Additionally, we've added subsection F to affirm that even if a permit holder does not qualify for the rebuttable presumption, it can prove that it did not directly or indirectly encourage violation of the law using other relevant and probative evidence. Because this change decreases the rule's burden on regulated entities and does not impact any additional entities, republication of the proposal is not required. Subject to your questions, this item is now before you for your consideration on adoption.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments, please? All right, having heard none, I move to approve adoption of Chapter 34.6, liability for actions of alcohol delivery drivers, as recommended by staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Boatright, thank you, sir. We have a second. We'll now vote.
All have voted.
Thank you. The motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of penalty policy. Ms. Horton, please.
We've arrived at the only non-rule item on today's list. The penalty policy, if adopted today, would go into effect on March 1st, 2021. No comments were received and no changes have been made since its proposal. With your approval of the penalty policy, training on its use begins on December 2nd. This item is now before you for your consideration on adoption.
Thank you, ma'am. And are there any comments or questions regarding the penalty policy discussion? Thank you. Having heard none, I move to approve the adoption of the penalty policy as recommended by staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Marino, thank you, ma'am. We'll now vote.
All voted.
Motion carries and motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration and potential action on publication of proposed amendments to Chapter 33, Subchapter B as in Bravo, fees and payments. Ms. Horton.
Before we move on to rule proposals, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pause to recognize the achievement that today marks on all the rules that we've adopted. We've now adopted the vast majority of the rules necessary to implement last legislative session sunset bill. And beyond doing what was required just to implement the bill, we've also improved upon each and every revised rule and subchapter that we opened up as part of the process. This is in large part due to the work, of course, of many subject matter experts from across the agency. But I also want to take a moment to specifically thank SIPI, the Strategic Initiatives and Performance Improvement Team of Amanda Collins, Amy Cardona, and especially Marianne Warlock. Marianne has kept this sprawling, complex, and work-intensive project on track for over a year, and will continue to keep us on track as we move forward in our quadrennial review of rules and whatever the legislature may hold for us for next year. Last but not least, I want to thank Kelly Johnson, who's a legal assistant for the Office of General Counsel. She does the voluminous, tedious, and absolutely essential work of preparing each rule item for submission to the Texas Register. Her attention to detail in perfecting these documents is a huge asset to the agency. So I just wanted to thank everyone and recognize the big task that now lies behind us. And with that, I will move on to the rule proposal items.
Well, hang on just one second. I happen to know how big of a deal that is, and I wanted to congratulate all y'all on getting it done. Good job.
Thank you, sir. Item 6.10 is consideration potential action on publication of proposed amendments to Chapter 33, Subchapter B, fees and payments. This is a proposal of new rules in Chapter 33, sections 22, 25 to 27, and 29 to 32, as part of that overall reorganization of Chapter 33 of the Commission's rules. We're also proposing to change the name of Subchapter B from fees to fees and payments to more accurately describe its contents. The majority of the proposed amendments are not intended to make substantive changes, but are intended to move the rule provisions to more appropriate places and make other editorial changes for accuracy and consistency. Subject to any questions, this item is now before you for your consideration on proposal.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All right, I move to approve publication of proposed amendments to Chapter 33, Subchapter B, fees and payments, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you, sir. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Our final item before executive session is the item for consideration potential action on publication of proposed amended rule Chapter 45.103 on premises promotion. Ms. Horton, please.
As part of the quadrennial rule review cycle that your staff has reviewed section 45.103 of its rules, which relates to and restricts the promotion of alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption. Amendments are proposed to allow tickets to certain charity events to include more than 2 alcoholic beverages in the price of the ticket, to allow a specific type of venue, a public entertainment facility, such as sports arenas, to sell tickets or passes that include more than 2 alcoholic beverages in the price of the ticket or pass. And finally, to reinforce the legal duty of the seller and server of alcoholic beverages to refuse to serve an intoxicated or underage individual, regardless of the number of alcoholic beverages included with a ticket or pass held by that person. Subject to your questions, this item is now before you for your decision on publication of the proposed amended rule.
Well said. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? I move to adopt or approve publication of proposed amended rule Chapter 45.103 on premises promotions as recommended by staff. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Commissioner Marino, thank you, ma'am. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Thank you. Our votes have been recorded and the motion is approved. The next item is executive session. Commission will now go into executive session under Government Code 551.074 and 551.071. The regular open session of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission will be in recess. The time is now 12:10, Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission has concluded its executive session and is now in regular open session. The date is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, and the time is 12:29 p.m. Next is potential action on items discussed in an executive session. No action will be taken. Next is the announcement of the next meeting date. The next regularly scheduled commission meeting date is planned for Tuesday, January 26th, 2021. Commissioners, do you have any problem with that date?
No.
Having heard none. Commissioner Boatright, you good? Commissioner Atkins, we're all good? Excellent, thank you. The commission is scheduled to meet then on Tuesday, January 26th, 21. The next is adjournment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to wish everyone a pleasant and happy Thanksgiving and a safe holiday season. And let's look forward to a 2021 that affords us a lot of the things that we took for granted in 2020, and to a brighter future for all of us, for our state, and for our nation. The time is now 12:30 p.m. and we are adjourned.